Okay, we should be recording, yes. So the theme today, which is really interesting, that kind of binds both of these talks, is the paths, I would almost say paths to pollination, or the linear connections that pollinators can make in your district through multiple districts of Rotary. And that's one of, I think, the real draws of pollinators, is that they can link different countries together by migration routes. They can link different clubs together along a river, along a coastline, that often insects, not just butterflies, but lots of other things, often, are following a linear type path. And that really speaks, I think, really creatively to the way a Rotary district, a couple of clubs can think about putting together projects that would be stepping stones to helping pollinators live, migrate, whatever. So that is really today's theme, is kind of these interesting corridors and pathways. So Chris, before we turn it over to David, anything else you would like to say before we get going?
Just welcome everybody. It's great to see you, and I see some new faces. That's wonderful. At the end of our presentations, hopefully we'll have some time left over and we can chat about anything that might be on your mind. I have a couple of announcements at the end I want to make, but I think we should get right into David's presentation. Tina, do you want me to introduce David?
Sure.
Yeah, Dave, as people on this call undoubtedly know, David Eaton, Vice President from the Kansas City Southern Railway Company, is based out of Monterrey, Mexico. He's with the Monterrey Metropolitano Rotary Club. David is a visionary, and last year he had this vision to use the railroad. I'll let David tell the story, but use the railroad to promote the monarch migration. So David, take it away.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chris, and recognize Chris's role as coach and mentor and sensei, and just want to thank you, Chris, for all your guidance and kind of guide rails, keeping us as focused and on track. Good morning, everybody. My name is David Eaton, and I am originally from a small little town in Northeast Arizona. Had an opportunity to get a Rotary Ambassador Scholarship back in 1991, 92. Changed my life, gave me a second language, ended up bringing me to Mexico for work. Met my wife through Rotary, really kind of just on all fronts, extremely grateful for Rotary. Been a member of a club down here called the Monterrey Metropolitan Rotary Club since 1995. We are in District 4130, which is a large part of Northeast Mexico. And we happen to be a significant part of the Monarch Butterfly Migration Route. I work for a railroad, a freight railroad, and I'll show you a map here in a couple seconds, but I work for a freight railroad called Kansas City Southern. Kansas City Southern is in the process of merging with Canadian Pacific, and we are creating a North American seamless freight railroad joining together Canada, the US, and Mexico. So keep that, Tina was talking about the importance of corridors and the importance of taking advantage of these long lineal opportunities that present themselves. Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern, if all goes well with the final regulatory approvals here in the next couple of days, we will change our name to Canadian Pacific Kansas City, CPKC, and we will, as I mentioned, join together the railroads of Canada, the US, and Mexico. And as a social responsible company focused on these ESG criteria, we began working closely with the Monterrey Metropolitan Rotary Club, and we came up with a couple of strategies to promote the protection of the monarch butterfly. If you look at where the tree here is in this first graph, That is really the highlands of the state of Michoacan, and that is where the monarch butterfly spends the winter. The overwintering forests are in the state of Michoacan. The state of Michoacan and the monarch butterfly hold symbolic, even mythical importance in Mexico. And of course, the monarch butterfly is a symbol of unity of North America. So from a corporation standpoint, there were some really good opportunities to focus on an environmental protection effort that played into a wonderful corporate communication opportunity to actually do some good and to promote the good name of our company. One of the things that we've heard frequently is Rotarians are working aggressively on these innovative partnerships between the private sector and local Rotary clubs. And so I think this is an interesting example of a partnership between a Rotary club and a private company. We also worked with an organization called NASCO, which is a trilateral development organization with membership from Canada, the US, and Mexico. And again, they focus on corridors in North America, and they joined us in these efforts. You'll see the name here of a couple companies that were involved. GATX is a 130-year-old company based in Chicago, and they are in the railroad sector. They make locomotives and lease rail cars, et cetera. They work in that space in the railroad industry. And then of Canadian Pacific is CP, and the company I currently work for that is in the process of merging with Canadian Pacific, called Kansas City Southern. Next slide, if you would, please. We focused on drilling down into a specific start date and a specific end date with a target. Our target was 60,000 trees. We wanted to come up with something that started in September, ended in December, and focused on a specific corridor. We worked with GATX, and we created a boxcar, a freight boxcar with a commemorative monarch butterfly locomotive design that you'll see here in a second, and also with a statue we call MoMA that we'll tell you about here in just a couple of seconds. But we focused on three primary objectives during the whole trip, and we started September 8th in Windsor. Up the host club in our activities in the Ontario area was Jennifer Jones's host club, Roseland, Windsor Roseland Rotary Club. A wonderful opportunity to meet the fine Rotarians there, visit the Point Pili Butterfly Reserve there in Ontario. So we started on September 8th, and then we ended on November 5th. And between September 8th and November 5th, we carried out a series of activities. The challenge, we wanted to call this a challenge so that we could either make the challenge or not, right? So we created this, this project with three primary objectives. Objective number one was education. In each of these events, and we'll talk about 10 stops of this boxcar and 28 different events, many pollinator resolution signing ceremonies that we'll talk a little bit about. But so education was the primary goal. We engaged with different partners such as Monarch Joint Venture or ProFauna or local NGOs on the route. So education was a primary objective. We brought in children for workshops and had a lot of really good interaction with the community. So talked about three objectives. Education was number one. Number two was pollinator habitat. In many of these locations, we actually planted gardens. We've been working on the gardens in different locations, signing the pollinator pledges, securing funding for other types of activities. And so we've talked about a couple of different types of habitat. Lineal gardens, of course, we're a railroad with 20,000 miles of track in North America. And that opportunity to create lineal gardens in our right-of-way is something that we're really excited about. Our industry's been around for 150 years, so our engineers can tell you about 10 reasons why we don't want to do this. We're trying to attack each one of those objections and create a viable lineal garden program on the railroad right-of-way. Pollinator gardens, of course, local pollinator gardens. We did things like work with industrial parks to create pollinator gardens in green space that is mandated by the authorities for industrial parks. We did remediation projects, for example, on the railroad. We were mandated as part of an expansion project for a terminal to add vegetation, add trees to the local environment. We made sure we did that in coordination and under the leadership of some NGOs that made sure we did it correctly for pollinator habitat. So education, pollinator habitat, and then 60,000 trees for the state of Michoacan for the El Rosario Butterfly Reserve. If you go to the next slide, please. So we started the project in Point Pili on September 8th, and then we had a wonderful event with the Windsor Roseland Rotary Club. And in each one of these events, we, and Chris, my coach, called these communication stunts. And one of my areas of responsibility in the railroad is corporate communications. And I took that as a compliment, Chris. So if we could check our mutes there, folks. I think somebody's got their mic open there. Thank you. So we had 2 communication stunts in the video with Jennifer Jones that we did. I call them communication starters. But MoMA, or Mama Mariposa, is a statue that we did with a Mexican artist. And MoMA, we did 22 replicas and the master statue. And almost like the Olympic torch, MoMA, Mama Mariposa, or Mother Butterfly, traveled throughout North America. Never seen so many pictures taken of kids and people that just wanted their picture taken with the MoMA statue. But it's a 3-dimensional statue. It has the colors of the US, Mexico, and Canadian flags on them, and the constant orange of the monarch butterfly. And MoMA was commissioned on Earth Day, April 22nd, and then went to Houston for the international conference, went all over North America. And during this period between September 8th and November 5th, made 28 different stops, 28 different events. If you go to the next slide, please. And so our first communication starter was MoMA, and our second communication starter was this GATX boxcar. It's a real boxcar, real freight railroad car. The boxcar has the monarch butterfly proudly displayed, and then it had a QR code. I want to talk a little bit about kind of how we got to the money, because I think that's something that everybody's interested in, is really kind of how do we get money for our very valid projects. We set a goal of $100,000 to plant 60,000 trees, and we're excited that we ended up securing over $100,000, $130,000. You notice there's a QR code on the boxcar there, and then on the sides you'll see the names of some companies. There were 10 corporate sponsors that each donated $10,000 a piece. And then we raised some money through the QR code and some different mechanisms through Rotary in coordination with some local Rotary clubs. So we had these 2 communication starters, which I think were wonderful communication strategies for us to hold these events. If you go to the next slide. And we worked aggressively in several different cities. In each one of these cities, and we went to 12 different cities where there was a host Rotary Club. So we spent about 1.5 years working on this, and we identified a host Rotary Club in each one of our cities. And then that host Rotary Club was in charge of receiving the MoMA statue, helping us identify a location where we could park the boxcar. Of course, it's a real boxcar, so you have to park it somewhere, right? And it has to be a place that's secure, where a public can come. And we worked with the railroads. From a corporate communication standpoint, I just wanted to share this side-by-side map. Of course, on one side, you see very clearly the migration route of the monarch butterfly. And you see the blue circle down in Mexico, and that's the El Rosario Sanctuary. That's where the overwintering forest is. And you see the kind of the funnel nature of the migration route that starts up in Canada, goes through the heart of the United States, and then ends in Michoacan, in the highlands of the Mexican plateau. And on the right-hand side here, you see this combined railroad, this combined Canadian Pacific, Kansas City Southern rail network. And I think you can see the connection between our freight railroad in North America, joining North America, and the migration route of the Monarch Butterfly. And so the corporate objectives of ESG and corporate social responsibility really melded into this project that is a North American project focused on joining the three countries, Canada, the US, and Mexico together. So again, we talked about those three primary objectives: education, habitat protection, and then 60,000 trees for Michoacan. If you go to the next slide, please. We had a host Rotary Club in each one of our cities, and you see the list here. And I sent you guys a link to a report that goes into detail of all of these different events. But we held between September 8th and November 5th an event in each one of these cities. And in each one of those cities, we focused on those three objectives: education, pollinator habitat, and raising money for the 60,000 trees. And it was an amazing experience. Really, I had the opportunity to take those 55 days and make the entire trip, and just meeting Rotarians in each one of these communities, how they engage with their local schools and community-based organizations and stakeholders was amazing. So this is the route here that we took and ended up down in El Rosario on November 5th. It says there MoMA's home on El Rosario in the last stop. And so the MoMA statue is now prominently displayed in the El Rosario museum there that they have at the Butterfly Reserve. And again, I mentioned that we made 22 replicas of the statue. And at each stop, the host Rotary Club was given a replica. Each of the corporations that donated $10,000 was given a replica. And a couple of political leaders, such as the governor of the state of Michoacan, were given these MoMA statues. Next slide, if you would, please. So the route was amazing. Really tried to follow the route of the Monarch Butterfly. We, in that big link that I sent you, you'll see pictures of all of the wonderful interactions with the community. This is one of many photos. This was the September 10th event in Windsor, and we had wonderful social media contacts, a lot of enthusiasm. It's amazing how the butterfly really is almost a messenger for other pollinators, right? People just really took to the message of protecting the monarch butterfly. Next slide, if you would, please. The events continued throughout the September, October, November timeframe. We crossed two borders, the Windsor-Detroit border, and we also crossed between the US and Mexico at Laredo, Texas, and Nuevo Laredo. We had a symbolic passing of the MoMA statue on the middle of the railroad bridge. Our railroad crosses between Laredo and Nuevo Laredo. There is a very large effort between the US federal government and the Mexican federal government to create a binational park with a very important pollinator habitat component between the US and Mexico on the Rio Grande riverbed there, right underneath our railroad bridge there. So we crossed two international borders, had a lot of wonderful events. If you go to the next slide, please. We then came into Mexico, drilled down into communities such as Monterrey, San Luis Potosí, Querétaro, Contepec, San Luis Potosí, a big event in Morelia. And then on September 5th, we ended up in the Butterfly Sanctuary in Michoacan. We announced that we had secured over $100,000 to plant the 60,000 trees. The MoMA statue is now prominently displayed there on hand. I think Chris mentioned it too. Chris recommended the Bicycling with Butterflies book, when we were there on November 5th, there was nobody there because the sanctuary doesn't open until November 18th. And I turn around and I see Sara Dykman there, and she was doing work. You know, she's out there as a warrior every day. And her reaction when she understood that we had hired a group that was recommended to us through Monarch joint venture, a group by the name of Profauna and Fondo Monarca. They work very, very closely with WWF. So the 60,000 trees, we're planting 60,000 2-year-old Oyamel trees. They're grown locally there at the sanctuary. Working with Eligio Garcia from Fondo Monarca. He is utilizing an assisted, he calls it assisted protected reforestation, So we're not going to plant the 60,000 trees just all in one location. It's actually, they've done some drone flyovers and some referencing after some studies that they've done. And so we'll be planting these trees. I'd like to mention that we planted 11,000 trees already. We did a small campaign last year, secured about $14,000 to plant 11,000 trees. Those trees were planted through this assisted protected reforestation strategy just this last July. So we'll do 60,000 trees. We've now deposited the money to Fondo Monarca, and we've created a mechanism to ensure that we have a monitoring process. We're working with Deloitte, the consulting accounting firm Deloitte, to make sure that we're documenting this appropriately for our sustainability reports. Public companies like ours are very keen on the importance of properly documenting these types of projects for our sustainability report. And we believe that we'll be moving towards types of carbon bonding and documentation is key to be able to appropriately receive and document credit for these types of important efforts. Next slide, please, I think is the last slide where I'll pause and just talk briefly about the money. We, as a private corporation, we partnered with the Monterrey Metropolitan Rotary Club here in District 4130. And it was very transparent because our Monterrey Metropolitan Rotary Club is organized as a nonprofit organization, the Mexican equivalent of a 501c. And so the money was managed through the Rotary Club. And as a corporation, we were able to maintain certain hands-off. Most of the large 10 companies that gave $10,000 were all associated with the railroad, either the railroad directly, GATX, or many of the vendors or customers of the railroad. But we were able to manage the money through the Monterrey Metropolitan Rotary Club. The Monterrey Metropolitan Rotary Club contracted and secured the QR code mechanism. And that was a challenge. Of the $130,000 that we secured, about 12,000 of that came from the QR code. A lot of people go into that QR code and consult, and look for information, but they didn't actually make a lot of donations. So most of the money came from large donations from corporations. We did then have some matching funds from a couple of Rotary clubs that were supportive along the route. And so really an exciting process. Chris, I want to thank you again for all of your guidance and support. Previously, I had sent a file with a bunch of the signing ceremonies. We had, I think, 11 total Pollinator pledge signing ceremonies. And we'll be back soon. We have some plans. We want to do 60,000 trees again in 2023. And we want to do 15 or 16 communities between late August 2023 and ending mid-December 2023. And one of the things that we want to promote is ecotourism. We want to, and we will promote a trip down to the sanctuary in December 2023, so folks can actually see this wonderful experience at the sanctuary and also contribute to the development of the tourism-based economy there. So thank you very much, Operation Pollination, for the space here this morning. And thank you very much again, Chris, for all your leadership and support. I really appreciate it.
David, this is just an incredible story. I honestly don't know what to say. And, we will gladly work with you again in 2023 as you launch another, great effort. Actually, I do know what to say, and I'm going to turn it over to Manon Crowley from District 6450 in Chicago. I think Manon wants to say some words.
Yeah, good to see you.
Hi, I'm just wondering, David, if you would consider becoming an Operation Pollination Ambassador yourself. We would love to have you as part of our group.
I would absolutely love to do that. And I
Oh,
would,
great.
yes, thank you. And it's good to see you again. Yes, I would be very honored to do that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and David, I'm wondering, we're recording this presentation, and certainly, I would want to ask you, and I know you are very busy with your job, but I think that what you just presented would be great just as a club talk, especially this winter, to really inspire clubs, and just want to know your thoughts on how you would feel if people presented like what was just recorded as a Zoom presentation to a club.
Would be honored. That'd be fantastic. And
Okay.
If you think about the scale of Rotary and how we attack polio, right? I mean, what we need are literally tens of thousands of these small gardens, right? And who better than local Rotarians to go out there and plant these gardens? And so anything we can do to spread the word, Tina, yes.
Yeah, I just read Biking with Butterflies, and again, she's emphasizing that linkage. And we all know that monarchs are they're a great charismatic species, but by creating habitat for them, we're also creating habitat for a lot of other pollinators, and beautifying our area, and just there's a lot of nice messages that can go along with this. And I think people within the Rotary Environmental Action Group kind of joke a little bit, but this topic is a great gateway topic to get a club
What does
that
Karen
may
call
not
a gateway drug?
be
The Monarch is a gateway drug?
Yes, yeah, it's for clubs that maybe are a little uncomfortable still with doing something environmental. I mean, this topic and this type of project is a great one to, how can anyone be against this? And I think, David, you are just a real inspiration of what Rotary, what creative thinking and Rotary, joining your job and Rotary and an idea together. It's just amazing what was done. I mean, the amount of corporate sponsorship, the funding, the clubs that you brought along, and most importantly, there's some real on the ground improvement taking place in Mexico with monitoring, with sustainability. And, that's what a corporation would want. If they're going to sponsor something, they're going to want to know, did this really work? And that's, I think, what makes me feel super excited about this project, is that it's going to continue to grow, but also be sustainably monitored. And that's one of the real links to this species, is improving the OML forest and increasing it, and having more eyes on that forest, that it doesn't get illegally logged and things like that. So this is just a total inspiring project. And hopefully at the end, we're going to shift now, if no one else has anything else, we're going to shift to our second speaker, but then at the end have some time, hopefully for some questions. And then the email that David sent out, if you didn't get it, Chris can definitely quickly link you to things that David sent, and some materials on that project. But I'm kind of inspired. I think this would be a great talk sometime this winter, and not only just a pollinator talk, but also just like, wow, this is a great example of how Rotary works, or how you get a successful project done in Rotary. It's extremely inspiring. But another inspiring project, and a district and clubs that have done a lot of work on their own, are some of the work that Michelle Schumer is going to give us over on the Pacific Northwest coast of North America. So Michelle, when you are ready, happy to have you give your presentation.
great. Thank you so very much. And it's going to be a hard act to follow from our previous speaker. That was really, really inspiring. I can't wait to learn more. And thank you for having me. Just a little bit about myself first, and then I'll launch into what we're doing here. Am I going to be able to share my screen? Yeah.
You should be able to. Anyone can share their screen on this Zoom, I believe. I don't think I have to give you any permission. I think you can just
Okay, let's
share.
see if I can get there.
Perfect. Yep. We can see
Okay.
your home screen for sure.
Fantastic. Well, I don't want to be there yet. Hang on now, just bear with me a little. So, as you know, we're here to talk about this pollinator garden guide, which I created for our district to create a pollinator highway throughout our district. But first, as I said, I'd love to tell you a little bit about who I am and how I got here. First, I am part of the Wenatchee Rotary Club, which is, can you see the globe there? Wonderful. Right in the middle of Washington State. So if you recall, down on the north-south, the mountains of the Cascades are between us and Seattle, right here. And so we're on the more drier side of the mountains, right at the confluence of the Columbia River here and the Wenatchee River. Our district 56 extends all the way from the border here of Washington and Oregon, all the way up here into Canada. So, whoops, sorry, let me start this again. So this is a little bit about what our valley looks like. And you can see all the apple orchards here. And we're known as the apple capital of the world. So essentially, before I started this project, that's all I knew about pollinators. I joined Rotary in 2016, and my background is in journalism. And after that, I was a busy mom raising 5 kids. So I came to Rotary because I wanted to make a difference in the world, and I find Rotary is just an incredible way of doing that. And I was also involved in other organizations, which we'll circle back to our project here. It was called the One Campaign, where we're trying to eradicate poverty, fight disease and hunger in the hardest hit places of the world. It was co-founded by Bono of U2. I was a big fan of that. But then I found Rotary, and Rotary was also making a difference locally. And I thought, hey, I can do this. And that's where I got involved with Rotary. Wenatchee is actually the home club of Dr. Ed Cadman, the past Rotary International president, who was the one who signed the papers to bring Polio Plus to the world. So I thought, with my experience with what I was doing previously, and along with this, that if I can make a difference from Wenatchee, you know, you can really change the world. So came to be part of the Peace Committee, ran into my district governor. This is how this came about. And he said, hey, I need someone for the environmental committee. I was like, oh, okay, I'm there. So that's how I kind of got started in this. So I didn't know very much at all about pollinators or what the need was or how great it was. I knew I had heard about honeybees, but in starting to do my research about this issue, I discovered some facts that really stood out to me. And I would love to make this a preview, but you'll have to see my edits here behind. So these were the things that kind of, as I started to do my research, stood out to me. This was the first poster that I created for our district conference. And I knew about bees, as I said, but I had no idea about wasps were pollinators, flies were pollinators, bats were pollinators. So here I am, I'm your audience. I'm the one that you're trying to reach. So I didn't know anything about native bees. Heaven forbid, I didn't know there were 20,000 species of native bees in the world and 4,000 just in North America, if I'm recalling that right. Oops, again, please bear with me. It's 6 o'clock in the morning here. And then a quarter of all bumblebees face extinction. A third of every bite of food is because of pollinators. And monarchs have been declining by 90% in the last 20 years. Of course, you all know this. But how do you reach somebody like myself? How do I reach other people in clubs, you know, who might not be as dedicated to the environmental area of focus? So this was the thing. And as a new environmental chair of our district committee, I wanted to create a project that was reachable for everyone and for every club. So it wasn't only my idea. We had been talking about this for a couple of years. And again, it was the peace and environment kind of coming together. Our past district governor had asked us to build peace poles. And with that, some gardens. Never kind of took off until we kind of dedicated it here. So we then asked folks to sign a pollinator pledge. And kind of getting a bit more simple here, but that's how we started. Let's just generate some excitement and enthusiasm. So that brings us to some of our meetings, which was, how do we get this done? How do we actually engage clubs and ask them to do this? And how do we keep track of what these clubs are doing so we can really show effectiveness and really show our data? And again, this is how we got started. So I created this guide in Canva. I don't know if you're all familiar with it, but it's something that can be done digitally and passed out to the clubs, or you could do a hard copy. Of course, being the environmental committee, we would prefer the digital version. We came up with a simple goal. Every club grows a new pollinator garden in their community to create a mappable District 5060 pollinator highway, linking our clubs together with welcoming habitats and Rotary's newest area of focus, protecting the environment. So what we're trying to do here isn't essentially a real continuous pollinator highway, but every club throughout our district, from north of BC down to that southern border between Washington and Oregon, every club has a pinpoint map of a pollinator garden. So we did a call to action. Here's our district governor. I'm not going to play the video right now. And he said we could do $1,000 prize for these gardens. Wow. And the biggest thing was as well, how are we going to measure our impact? This was part of this. And you can see here, we're going to record not only the gardens that are built, but some of the data as we do it. So the number of gardens, plants, volunteers, whether the clubs recruit new members, whether we created community partners or not. How much reach did we have into our community? How much exposure did Rotary have? And again, here's some of the why pollinators. If people need, forgive me. There, no. People need convincing again, or just, you know, to get that motivation of why are we doing this? Why are we concerned? Here's the link now to the Pollinator Pledge, which you can sign up. And basically, this is our first contact point with the other clubs. Hopefully, they'll reach out to us as a district committee. We had some more criteria and guidelines from our governor. I had a conversation with him and I said, you know, this seems like such a big project. What do we want those clubs actually to do? And he said, really, it doesn't have to be much. It could be small. Clubs can collaborate. It doesn't have to be a certain number of plants, but let's make it a sustainable, a specific, substantial project. So you can see here, we should be creating new gardens. Clubs can collaborate. We can partner with schools, churches, other organizations. But then also down here, we have reporting requirements. And before a club can be entered into that $1,000 contest, they have to tell us what they did, not only with the information, but also with pictures and hopefully video, because we can create something later to enhance that. So then what's next for clubs? Oh, God, forgive me here, guys. Again, it is so early in the morning. Well, we're going to sign the pledge. And then the next thing they have to do is to locate the garden. But the biggest thing here is, you know, don't try to do this yourselves. Find a local community expert. When I started doing that research as a newcomer to this, you think a garden, that's easy. Well, maybe not so much. Maybe when you start thinking about native plant requirements, sun exposure, your land, your soil, where are you going to plant it, irrigation, all of these things, as you know, because I'm talking to the experts here, come into play. So let's not have clubs try to reinvent the wheel. So the first thing we encouraged them to do was to reach out to those community partners and find somebody who's an expert. For our club, in our area, we have what are called conservation districts, which are supported by the United States Department of Agriculture, I believe. And so we reached out to them, and it's actually their job to help communities design gardens. So there you go. We established that connection with the community partner. 3, design and prep. 4 was plant, and 5, report, maintain, and enjoy. So here we have a progress tracker, and that's something else that I wanted to show you here. So here we can see some clubs that are in action. So you can take the Ellensburg Downtown Club. Have they taken their pledge? Yes. Who's in charge? What's their phone number? Do they actually have an environmental committee already? Are they creating one? They are located, yes. Their design, you can see whether they actually have it or if it's in progress. You can see whether they planted, when they planted, and we have our reporting. And here we're going to talk about the map that we're building and notes. So some folks have reported this on their own, and some are actually called and made phone call contacts. So now you have your information all in one nice one stop here that an organizer can see what's happening throughout the district, and that's what's really helpful. So back to the pollinator guide. Oops, where's our, here we go. Okay, so next page. Here's their worksheet. And this should be a PDF that somebody can, oh God, you guys, I am so sorry about this. Crazy. Stay. That somebody can start building a plan with. A lot of times you'll find that it's easy for a Rotary Club when they're not used to dealing with projects like this to get overwhelmed. In fact, our club itself, and this could be a perspective, we've become more of a grant making club. And so a hands-on project like this was a little bit out of our comfort zone. So hopefully something like this would help. And again, you see our district here, and eventually this will be a pinpoint ArcGIS map where you can click on Wenatchee and it will pull up the photos of our garden and a paragraph of our garden, and maybe even a short video of us planting our garden. So you can see what the goal is here. And we're moving on. Oh. There, patience. Okay, so in talking with my district governor, I love our district governors. I don't know if you all have been district governors, but thank you for all you do. Because he said, you know what, don't worry about providing funds. The funds will come. People will be able to raise their money and do that. Make the project easy for them. So this is where our resources came about, because we realized that even in our district, we have different experts. We've got different conditions. We've got so much to choose from. So here we have basically a pollinator 101. If you're coming into this like myself, you want to do a garden, but let's make it easy. So I culled a lot of research from the internet, kind of funneled it into this. So people don't have to go anywhere else. They don't have to do any more research. They can just click on links here. This is all linkable. And then we have garden designers, and we have a supplier directory from our area, which we have in the United States. Agricultural universities are really great resources, those conservation districts that I mentioned. And we have garden checklists. So however you want to operate. And of course, our garden pros. We also have our Operation Pollination on here. So thank you very much for all the work that you have done. Really appreciate that. And we have native plant lists to make sure that we're mostly planting native. Experts and organizations. This clicks to another resource list. And again, we have our progress tracker and our project report, which will go to a Google document. And after this, the clubs will receive their signs. So how did this all turn out in the end? Thank you. So here we are. This is an example of our garden. Here we are with our designer and our garden design, contemplating the project in the morning. We did this on Make a Difference Day, which the whole community comes out all over the United States in October for this one day. So we kind of tied into that. And we got some extra publicity with that. We chose an area that was across from our train station here that had been a rock garden. It had existing irrigation. The city had covered it with rock. There was nothing there, just for ease of maintenance. We reached out to the city and agreed to a maintenance plan, long-term. Of course, with our designer, we selected low maintenance plants. And we also created a memorandum of understanding. We had an attorney in our club who worked with us to do that. So there was some planning involved. And we shared this with other clubs, and they're getting involved as well and doing the same sort of thing. Here we are at work. It was hard work with those rocks, but it was fun. Using an auger here. So it was a pretty successful day. And let's see if this works. This is just a fun little video. This is Rotarians after a good project, right? There we go. So, and here's the sign that our clubs will receive that was created in our district environmental club. And this will be a metal sign that the environmental club, the environmental committee will hopefully pay for each club to receive, so that we have some uniformity along our gardens. So this is kind of how we did it. The only other thing I wanted to share with you was about the guide. Now, forgive me for flipping back and forth. You can see that was a little difficult again at 6 o'clock in the morning here. So thank you for your patience on those flipping pages. That was created in Canva, and I don't know if you all are familiar with it, but in there, there's also a, when you share it, you can click a flip book or a hazing link. And all these are under free accounts, and you can create these guidebooks. So what's kind of the takeaway of this? I think the takeaway is, you know, collecting the data. It was kind of the goal. Again, in my previous advocacy work with the one campaign that I mentioned, we do a lot of data collection of how many people did you reach out to? How many people wrote letters? How many people spoke to their congressman? What did you actually do? So we can look at the bigger picture. So I kind of took that lesson and applied it here. How many gardens did we create? But how many plants? How many volunteers? Did we reach out to partner organizations? Did you recruit members? You know, how broad did you use this Rotary garden, not just to benefit the insects, but to benefit the partnerships in your community, to benefit your Rotary Club for attracting new members? So hopefully that's kind of what that accomplished. That data is critical in measuring progress and providing motivation and big ideas. So you know, of course, there's always challenges, as you can see. It's great to create something, but we still have to go through and get clubs to use it, finish the tracking. The mapping we will get done as well. And hopefully I can share that with you at some point, where we have a story map through the ArcGIS system where we can click on it. So the potential is there that we can use that. And I think that the overall takeaway here is, you know, don't be afraid of those big ideas. don't be afraid as well of talking to the audience who might not be familiar with a project that you might be an expert in. Present the information in a clean and easy to read way, easy to navigate way. So that is, exactly what I wanted to share. I hope it's helpful for you. You are welcome to create something similar, or I can share links with you. So if there's any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Well, I've got the number one question that I bet a whole bunch of us want to know, because I could see everyone writing down Canva, and I'm like, boy, I've never edited or done anything in a format like this, but I'm now really curious to learn. But how willing would you be, if credit was given, could other districts or clubs take your version and just alter it to make it fit their club or district?
Absolutely. I would love that. And I would be deeply honored, honestly. Again, this was almost for my purpose of organizing all that research that I had come up with, part of the digestion process, I guess, if you will, So yes, I would really, I'd feel greatly honored if you do that. Canva is a free tool for the most part. You have to click around in it. One thing I would also recommend on the nitty-gritty of the how-to is that our Rotary International Brand Center has the guidelines in there.
Yes.
And I try to incorporate a lot of our colors and our fonts, all of that from the brand center. You can just copy and paste the color code into Canva, and you get the exact color that Rotary requires. So we're a little limited, played with it a little bit just for design, but it sure was fun. You could also, insert your own photos from your own districts. That would be fun to do. And any other, ideas that you guys have, I'd love to hear.
Michelle, that was fabulous. Thank you. And I was talking with Lori Zuckerman, who is the communications director for SRAG, just yesterday. And she asked me if your pollinator guide could be put up on the SRAG website as a project. So
Sure.
I think I heard the answer from you. I think it was a big yes.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if okay with you, I will tell Lori Zuckerman that yes, by all means,
Yes.
please put this as a project up on the SRAG website. You
Yes.
haven't done that already, have you?
No, I have not. And
Okay.
like I said, there's still room to grow. I still need to build our map, which there'll be a link in the guide to the actual map. And that's not me working on that. That's one of our techie savvy Rotaractors, but she's in exams right now. So we'll get that done. I imagine in spring we'll kind of accomplish and fill in all these little holes. But if it's okay, if she's okay with that in the meantime, I sure am.
Okay. I was thinking about this too, and how can we spread this around the world? And, ideally, to me, instead of every district, doing their own thing, we kind of have a generic guide for Rotary that, yes, it could be modified, locally, but, let's admit it, there's not every district that's going to want to take this on. So it would be great if we could have an off-the-shelf thing to just hand to people and say, if you want to get involved in pollinator protection, here you go. You don't have to do a thing, just follow the steps in here. Granted, we're a big world, and everybody has different issues wherever they might live. But I think having something that could be, shared like that would be good. And I just want to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say I could create a guide for the guide of how to personalize your guide. So
There you go. There you go. Before I go into some end of meeting announcements, does anybody want to say anything to Michelle?
Yeah,
or
Michelle, it looks like Michelle has a question for Michelle.
Thank you. Yes, a quick question, maybe, Michelle, this is wonderful. Could you tell us a little more about the 1,000 that the district provided as kind of an incentive, or how that works?
Sure. Actually, that was the idea of our district governor. Again, he collaborating with him was crucial, I think. It's great as a district committee, but if you get your governor involved, and he's been going around to every club, and at his meetings, he actually has a wonderful pollinator hat. I should have had a picture of him in his pollinator hat with all sorts of flowers and everything poking out of it. And so he's really promoting the project. Our committee had a budget of $5,000. So with his support, we dedicated 1,000 for the district conference. Again, the criteria, that's what a lot of clubs were asking about, is how do we qualify for this contest? And that I left up to him, and he just said, keep it simple. It has to be a new garden. If clubs collaborate, they'll split, and they win, they'll split the proceeds. So it'll just be a drawing, essentially, at our district conference. And if you want to be entered into the drawing, you got to do the report. Does that answer your question, Michelle?
That did, thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
Any other questions for David